Alright, in this video we're going to be replacing the capacitors on these Apple Macintosh logic boards. Now, two of the boards here, as you can see, are SE30 logic boards, and these are part of the machines that I got off that lot from Craigslist the other day that I made a video on a couple days ago. And then we've also got a Macintosh Classic 2 logic board right here that needs to be recapped as well, and that's actually from a machine I got quite some time ago. In this video we're just going to go ahead and replace the capacitors on all three of these boards, and none of these boards actually boot up at the moment. The SE30 boards just turn on and show some lines on the display, and the classic board here just shows some like checkerboard pattern on the screen. So obviously that is a sign of bad capacitors on all these boards. So the first thing we're going to do before we get started on anything is I'm going to go ahead and clean up some of this capacitor residue all over the board. So you can kind of see, if you look closely, that it has caused some corrosion on some of the chips here. You can see the capacitors right here. And yeah, you can see the chips around it have corroded, and that stuff will just need to be cleaned off, which shouldn't be too difficult. The only thing I'm concerned about is whether or not a trace is broken because of this, but chances are that hasn't happened. And as you can see here, the battery hadn't leaked at all, so I went ahead and removed it on this board. So yeah, there's some more capacitors here, and there's another one right there. So here's the second SE30 board. This one is actually a little bit better. You can see that there isn't as much corrosion around them, and so yeah, that one looks pretty good. And then the Classic 2 board right here, you can see that this one isn't that corroded either, but there is some residue on it which I'll have to clean off. But so the first thing we're going to do is just go ahead and start by cleaning off this board, and I'm just going to do that off camera. Basically what I'm going to be doing is just using a toothbrush and some rubbing alcohol, maybe some Q-tips as well, and just scrubbing around those areas where there is some corrosion or residue. And it's particularly bad right here, as you can see. But yeah, after doing that, all that residue should come right off, and then we will begin the recapping process. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real fast and resume the video, and we'll begin the recapping process. Alright, so I've just gotten the board cleaned with some rubbing alcohol, and or all three of the boards actually. And so now all we're going to do is just begin by removing all of the original capacitors. Now, as you can see, these are the electrolytic can style capacitors, and they are surface mount. So the way we're going to remove them is we're just going to grab onto them with a pair of pliers and slowly rock them back and forth until they break free of the board. Now, that shouldn't pull up the pads, and what it should do is just pull the leads out of the capacitors themselves. Now, as you can see, a couple of them actually already came off while I was cleaning it, just because they were like so corroded and leaking, I guess. So yeah, all we're just going to do is just go through, remove all the capacitors, and then from there we're going to just go ahead and solder on the new capacitors. Now, the new capacitors I got are actually identical replacements to these. They are can electrolytic capacitors. Now, I'm not sure if those are the best replacements for these boards, but those are just what I ended up getting, and those should just work just fine. However, I've seen a lot of people replace these with like tantalum capacitors or ceramic capacitors, so I might do that at two other boards that I get in the future. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and replace them with the original can electrolytic style capacitors. So I'm going to go ahead and put the camera up in the tripod and begin by removing all of the capacitors. So I'll be right back. Alright, so as you can see, I've gotten the camera up in the tripod here. So now what we're just going to do is go ahead and remove these capacitors. So I'm going to make sure I can still get that in frame here. Okay, good. So we're just going to start with these right here. Now, all you do is just grab onto it with a pair of pliers. Make sure the leads are on each side of the plier. So just grab onto the cap and just rock it back and forth. And that one, as you can see, came off extremely easily just because it was so corroded. And I think all of these are going to be about that easy. Yep, This one's a little bit tougher, so if it's tough like this, just rock it back and forth. You just don't want to pull those pads off the board because that will not be easy to fix. Sometimes rocking it this way can help as well. Okay, I heard one of them break off there. Sometimes a circular motion can also help, because basically what you're doing is just breaking the leads off. This one's being a little bit stubborn. There we go. That one came off pretty cleanly. So let's get this one. This one. Now we'll get these two. It's a little bit more difficult. Okay, and I think one of those pads actually came off of that one. Possibly. No, actually no it didn't. Yeah, I think that one's alright. So let's go for this one. This one's moving all over the place. Yeah, I think that one's about to pull the pad off. Yeah, that one just pulled the pad off, but I'll fix that. So the next ones are the ones right here. So, I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, it's because it's behind the RAM here. There you go. So this one right here. So I'll go ahead and pull this one off. And that one was easy. And the last one is right behind this ROM sim here. And there we go. So only one of the traces came off, or one of the pads. And I don't even know if I need to put that cap back on. I might just skip it. But, yeah, that is all the capacitors off. So now what I'm going to go ahead and do is get my soldering iron set up, and we will begin the process of soldering on the new capacitors. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll be right back. Alright, so I've gotten my soldering iron all set up and ready. Now the first thing to do before actually soldering on any of the capacitors is to prepare these pads to have solder applied to them. So I'm just going to go ahead and use some flux here and put it on there. That'll make this a whole lot easier. Actually, let me go ahead and just a little bit is all we need. This will also help to clean up the board as well. Alright, so now that all the flux is applied, we'll just go ahead and heat up these pads and get the solder to flow on them correctly. As you can see, it's not too difficult. It's flowing pretty well, actually. Alright, so as you can see, I've just finished cleaning up all the pads and getting them tinned. So now what we're going to do is just go ahead and begin installing the capacitors. So the first capacitors we're going to do are the ones right here. And these three are the 47 microfarad capacitors. So let me get those out real fast here. Let's see, 47 microfarad. Alright, so I got a few of them right here, as you can see. And now we're just going to go ahead and solder them in. So all we're going to do here is just get a pair of tweezers. If I can find them, here they are. And just take one, position it on the pads, and then solder it in. So let's see, we've got this one, and the negative is the black side of it, I think. So we will just position that capacitor like so. And then all we got to do is touch the ends of the pads there, and that should solder it right in. So let me go ahead and hold that. Alright, and there's one side in. Actually, it might be easier if I switch the board over to this side. You can still see that here. Alright, so there's the capacitor we're soldering in. So let me just grab it here. And there we go, there's one capacitor installed. So now, let me go ahead and get another one out. So I think all of those three are the 47 microfarad capacitors. So we'll go ahead and grab another one here. Line it up. Place it on the board like so. And we'll go ahead and solder it in. Actually, that's the wrong one. It goes right here. Let's see, positive, yes. Alright, that one's in. So let's take this one and put it in as well. That one goes right here. Alright, so as you can see, we've got those three in now. So, yeah, so far the process is going pretty well. So the next thing we're going to do is just get the rest of them, and I'll be right back, and we will proceed with the rest of the process. So I'll be right back. Alrighty, so the next three we're going to do are the three right next to the main logic board connection. Now I did break a trace off of that middle one there, so I'm just going to skip that one for now. But after I finish soldering the rest of them in, I will see if I can manage to patch that trace up and figure out where it goes. But then again, it is just a filter capacitor, so I really don't think I need to fix that. So I might just leave it and test it and see if it works, and if not, I will go back and fix it. But if it works without that capacitor, then I'm just not going to put it in. So now what we need to do is just get another capacitor here and line this one up so the polarity is in the correct orientation, and then we'll just go ahead and solder this one on just like the rest. Alright, that one's in. So let's get this last one here. Yeah, you can see that I got this one right there in. So now we're just going to get the other one in. Alright, that one's in now. There we go. And now I guess we'll go ahead and get this little one right here. And that one is a 1 microfarad capacitor. So you can see that. Alright, that one was pretty easy to get in. So now, looks like we've got one right here. Make sure you can see that, yes. That one's in. And now we've got these two down here to do, and that's our last two. And I'm also going to do these electrolytic capacitors. Actually, you can't see them. I'm going to do these through-hole capacitors right here, and then there's another one right here, as you can see. So I'm going to do those as well. I did get replacements for them. And so now we're just going to go ahead and do this bottom one right here. There we go. Now that cap is installed. And the last one we need to do Alright, so now that we've got all the surface mount capacitors done, now all we've got to do is work on these. So let me go ahead and get this one out real fast. And yeah, then we should be good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera because that one's going to be a little bit difficult. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real fast and then resume the video once I'm done. Alright, so as you can see I have finished replacing the electrolytic capacitors. And that means the board is now fully recapped and ready to be tested. So we'll go ahead and take a look at all the caps real fast. There's some here. You can see where the trace broke off of that middle one right there. So like I said, I'm not going to put that on unless for some reason the system doesn't work without it. So we've got this electrolytic, which I changed. This one, there's one here, one here, and yeah, they're all installed. So now I'm just going to go ahead and put this in the SE chassis, hook it up, and then we'll go ahead and see if it actually turns on and works. So I'll be right back. Alright, so I have gotten the board installed in the SE30 chassis. Now, before I turn it on, I do want to tell you that I did do some preliminary testing before I started making this part of the video, and there is indeed something else wrong with the board. Now, I'm not exactly sure what the issue is, because I haven't really been able to figure it out, but I'll just go ahead and turn it on here and show you what it does. Alright, so you can hear it chimes when I turn it on. And I'll wait till the screen comes on here. So yeah, you can see that there's some weird vertical lines in the display. Now I'm not sure exactly what's causing this. You can see that the lines are on top of the display, so like you can see the mouse pointer in the background, but it disappears when you move it underneath each of those lines. So I mean, I cleaned the board off pretty well, but I'm not exactly sure why it is still showing these lines. Now this is normally a symptom of, you know, bad capacitors and leaking capacitor goo. So maybe it just needs to be cleaned a little bit more, but for now, I'm just going to go ahead and end this video, and we're going to go ahead and resume it and recap the second SE30 logic board, and hopefully that one will work a little bit better than this one. So yeah, I'll resume the video either if I get this working, or I'll just resume it and we'll start recapping the other logic board. So regardless, I will resume the video in just a second. Alright, so unfortunately I was unable to get the other board to work properly even after cleaning it some more, but now we're just going to go ahead and just start taking the capacitors off this board and recapping this one. So first thing we need to do is just get my pliers, and we will begin the process of removing all of the old capacitors from the board. Alright, now that we've gotten all the capacitors removed, now we're just going to start the process of soldering the new ones back on. Or first off, we're going to be clearing or tinning up the pads on each of the areas where the capacitors are supposed to go. And then we'll go ahead and solder the new capacitors on. Alright, so as you can see, I have just finished putting in all the new capacitors, and so now all I gotta do is replace these two, and I'll do that off camera because it's pretty annoying to have to do these, because for some reason the through-hole ones are really hard to get out of this board. So I'm just going to go ahead and do those off camera, and once I get that done, I will put it in the machine and we're going to go ahead and test it. So I'll be right back. Alright, so as you can see, I've just finished recapping the board. So we've got two new electrolytics on here, and then all of these other little surface mount can electrolytics, of course, have been changed, as you just saw. So with that, let's go ahead and hook this board up to the rest of the machine, and we will go ahead and test it and see if this one works, unlike the other one. So I'll be right back. Alright, so here we are again at the chassis with the newly recapped board installed. So let's go ahead and turn it on and see what happens. Alright, it chimes. And look at that, she is fully working. So you can see that the mouse cursor is right there. The screen looks perfect, no lines, no artifacts, nothing. So yeah, she seems like she's working. So I'm gonna go see if I can find a hard disk with an OS installed, and then I'm gonna go ahead and hook this up to the machine and see if we can actually get it to boot up off a copy of Mac OS. So let me go do that, and I'll resume the video. Alright, so as you can see, the machine actually did boot up, and I got it to actually boot off the original hard disk. Now, you can see that I kind of have it hooked up like that, sort of hanging out the back. That's because for some reason that hard drive seems to not like to spin up all the time, and I have to like spin it by hand, not the actual platter, but I kind of whip the hard drive in a circular motion with my hand, and that, I guess, frees up the platters and lets them spin when I connect or turn the drive on. But I managed to get it to turn on now, and you can see that the machine has indeed booted. So let's go ahead to About This Mac here. Now when I started it up, it said it had RAM doubler installed, so it looks like it's maxed out at 8 megs of RAM, and with Connectic's RAM doubler it is at 14 megabytes. Now this does not have a 2SI or 2FX ROM, of course, so it is not going to be able to use more than 8 megs of RAM. But yeah, as you can see, one weird thing that's going on here is the screen has a little bit of a ghosting effect, as you can see, but that's not a problem with the logic board. That's something with the analog board, and it's more than likely bad caps on there. So I'll have to replace the caps on that board. But yeah, as you can see, the machine is working, and it seems to be working very well. So unfortunately, I could not. The other board isn't working. I'll have to see if I can figure out what's wrong with that one. But the second board I recapped, as you can see, is fully working. And now, like I said at the beginning of this video, I was planning on recapping a Macintosh Classic 2 board as well. But unfortunately, I ran out of caps. For some reason, I accidentally ordered 2 less caps than I needed for both of these SE30 boards. And so now I don't have enough caps to recap the Classic 2 board. But I'll have to just make another video about that in the future. So yeah, so that has been the recap and at least repair of one board of these Apple Macintosh SE30s. So I'm going to go ahead and shut this machine down and turn off the machine. So that has been the repair of these two Apple Macintosh SE30 logic boards, or at least the recap of both of them, the repair of one. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this video.